The stars were quiet in the Tavor system. 5 empty planets circled a faded red sun. No signs of life, no resources worth fighting for, just rocks, ice, and dust. The Ardent was a civilian science vessel, slow but strong. Its crew of 40 scientists, engineers, and a few ex-soldiers had spent the last 6 months mapping gravitational waves near the dead star. It was routine work. Peaceful work. Captain Miller stood in the control room, sipping coffee while watching a dull screen. Nothing moved out there. It was just another quiet day in space. Then it all went dark. The sensors blinked out first. The comms followed. Before the crew could react, space outside the ship lit up. Dozens of alien warships uncloaked, sleek, black and silent. They didn't send a message. They didn't ask questions. They opened fire. The first blast tore through Ardent's engine section. The second shattered its communication tower. Explosions raced down its spine like a chain of firecrackers. The crew barely had time to scream. In less than 1 minute, the Ardent was gone, a broken shell spinning into the void. The alien ships didn't stay to watch. They deployed a small black beacon and disappeared into deep space. The beacon repeated a single message in many languages. Your reach is ended. Your kind grows too bold. Stay within your walls or be broken. 3 days later, Earth received the signal. The footage showed everything: the sudden appearance of the enemy ships, the violent attack, the cold warning. It spread fast. From lunar colonies to Martian cities, people stopped what they were doing and stared at the horror. News anchors tried to remain calm. Analysts guessed who the attackers were: a species from the outer spiral, maybe, or an unknown power watching from the dark. Military leaders debated what to do, but the people didn't need time to decide. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a message, and humans understood it clearly. At a military base in North America, General Blake stood with his arms crossed, watching the footage for the 10th time. His face was hard, jaw clenched. They didn't just attack a ship, he said to the silent room. They declared war. Across the planet, governments met in emergency sessions. Even countries that hadn't spoken in years now shared calls, resources, data. Old enemies became allies overnight. No one argued about it. Humanity had been challenged, and humans, as history had proven again and again, did not take kindly to threats. Within a week, the United Human Defense Alliance was activated, a command structure built for emergencies no one thought would ever happen. Earth's orbital yards were put into overdrive. Hidden factories on Europa came alive. Shipyards around Saturn lit up like fireflies. Project Revenant, a black-budget weapons program, was pulled from the shadows. For years, it had been considered too dangerous to use. Now, it wasn't just allowed, it was mandatory. Ships, once shelved for being too aggressive, were suddenly needed. Weapons banned under peace treaties were pulled from storage. AI combat cores, cryo-clad armor, railguns that could punch through moons, all of it came back. Across all this, one message was repeated: we didn't start this, but we will finish it. Commander Reed got the call after midnight. He was living alone in a quiet outpost on Titan's northern ridge. After years of service, he'd retired early, not because he was tired, but because war had taken everything from him. He had no family left, no medals worth remembering. The moment the call came through, he knew what it meant. No one called him anymore. He stared at the message on his screen for a long moment. We need you back. Command has cleared your rank. You'll lead the first strike. Reed didn't hesitate. He closed the screen, packed his few things, and left the outpost without looking back. 10 days after the Ardent was destroyed, Earth sent a message into deep space. Simple, clear, and cold. To those who struck. First, we are not diplomats now. We are not explorers. You brought war to us. We will answer. In the shadows between stars, Human warships began to move. They didn't travel with flags or songs. They traveled in silence, carrying a rage centuries in the making. The attackers had hoped to scare humans into retreat. What they had done was give humanity a reason. And that was their first mistake. Gathering the Storm Commander, Reed stepped off the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive warship in front of him. It hung in orbit above Earth, its metal body stretching nearly a kilometer long. Its black armor reflected no light. It was a ship built for one purpose: destruction. Its name was Vanguard. As he walked through the docking bay, soldiers stood at attention. Technicians rushed to finish final upgrades. Drones carried crates of weapons and armor to waiting soldiers. The place buzzed with movement and noise. War was no longer a rumor, it was real. And it had a deadline. Reed had been away from command for years, but nothing had changed. The weight in his chest returned the moment he put on the black commander's jacket again. He didn't want to be here. He didn't like war. But he knew how to win one. And that's why they brought him back. In a dark meeting room aboard Vanguard, the top military minds sat around a wide table. Screens showed fleet movements, satellite scans, intercepted messages. Across one screen was a name: the Volari, the alien species believed to be responsible for the Ardent attack. They've taken 5 outer systems from smaller species in the last year, one officer said. Fast attacks. No negotiations. Same message every time. Stay in your place or be crushed. General Blake nodded. They see us as weak. That's why they hit us first. But they made a mistake. They left witnesses. A satellite from the edge of the Taver system had caught the tail end of the Ardent's destruction. And it had scanned the energy signature of the Volari ships. That was all Earth needed. Now they knew how to find them. Project Revenant had been quiet for decades. It was created long ago during Earth's worst wars, a final option in case of total collapse. Most people believed it had been shut down. They were wrong. Deep beneath the ice of Europa, machines had been building weapons far more advanced than anything used in regular combat. Silent drones, pulse cannons, HFY that could rewrite enemy systems mid-battle, and something else. A new kind of armor, not just strong, but alive. It adjusted to the wearer's thoughts, hardened on impact, and even healed small wounds. Soldiers wearing it looked less like men and more like walking tanks. They were called ghost units, and they were being awakened. Among them was Lieutenant Kara. She had trained for years, but had never seen real war. Now she stood with her unit, inside a cold steel hangar, listening to her orders. "You are the tip of the spear," said the voice of the command officer over the loudspeaker. "You are the first thing they will see when we arrive. Make sure they remember it." Kara nodded to her squad. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The Volari had killed hundreds of humans. Scientists, civilians. Her cousin had been aboard. Ardent. That was all the motivation she needed. Back on Earth, billions watched as the fleet was revealed. Massive warships launched from orbit. Smaller, destroyers flew in formation. Ghost units marched into transport carriers. The message was clear. Humanity was not hiding. They were coming. The news called it the Great Response. People cheered in the streets. Others cried, praying for the safety of those sent into battle. But one thing was clear in every face: unity. Humanity had its differences before, but now they had one voice. And that voice was full of fury. Inside Vanguard's command center, Commander Reed stood in front of a large display showing the path to the Volari outpost. It would be their first target. Reed turned to his crew. "This isn't about revenge," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "This is about respect. They thought we wouldn't respond. They thought wrong. We will show them what it means to face humans in war." The crew nodded. "We strike hard. We strike first. No warnings, no mercy." As the fleet entered deep space, A silence fell across the ships. No music played. No speeches were given. Just quiet focus, the kind that comes before a storm. In her transport, Lieutenant Kara closed her eyes. She thought of her cousin's laugh, the way she always carried a sketchpad on her belt, even on duty. She was peaceful, Kara whispered. She never hurt anyone. And now she was gone. Kara opened her eyes, and the HUD in her helmet glowed to life. Target, Velari Border Outpost, ETA, 42 hours in the darkness of space. A message was sent. To the Veil ARI. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was a final statement. You started this. We are coming to finish it. The first strike, the Velari Border Outpost, floated quietly near a red dwarf star. It was large, armed, and surrounded by 5 warships. For the Velari, it was just another station, one of many built after they had taken nearby systems from smaller species. Inside the control tower, Commander Yalek stood with his arms behind his back, watching the stars through the glass window. Nothing moved. Just empty space. He was bored. We should never have warned them, said one of his officers. Humans are slower than we thought. Still hiding. Yalek let out a low laugh. They are not warriors. They build science ships. They talk too. Much. They didn't even fire back when we destroyed theirs. The officers around him laughed too, but none of them noticed what was coming. Not yet. Exactly 42 hours after the message from Earth was sent. The human fleet arrived. They didn't come in slowly. They didn't announce their presence. They dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, silent, fast, and ready to kill. The Vanguard led the attack. Behind it came smaller cruisers and gunships, each one marked with black and red stripes, the symbol of war. Inside Vanguard's command deck, Commander Reed stood still, eyes locked on the enemy station. Fire, he said. The first strike came. From orbit, a kinetic rod launched at near light speed. It wasn't flashy. It had no fire or sound, but when it hit the station's defense ring, it cut through it like paper. Then the second and third rods followed. Velari ships turned to respond, but it was too late. Human ships began firing plasma volleys and smart missiles. Their weapons tracked targets, shifted in mid-flight, and pierced enemy armor easily. The Velari were not prepared. They had expected fear. Instead, they met fury. On the ground inside the outpost, alarms screamed. Red lights flashed. Soldiers shouted and ran to battle positions, but it was already over. Ghost units had dropped from low orbit, tall, fast and deadly. Their armor shimmered like liquid metal. They moved like shadows, silent and unstoppable. Lieutenant Kara led the front team. Her boots hit the deck with a heavy thud as her unit charged into the outer gate. The enemy opened fire, but the shots bounced off her armor. Her HUD lit up with red targets. Push forward, she shouted. The hallway shook with battle. Ghost units advanced, clearing rooms in seconds. The Velari defenders had numbers, but not the skill, not the speed, not the FERLESSN, ESS. Within 20 minutes, the outpost was fully taken, back in orbit. One Velari warship tried to flee. The Vanguard locked on and fired a gravity torpedo. Explosion didn't just destroy the ship, it tore it into pieces that disappeared into space like dust. Commander Reed watched the scene calmly. Send a signal, he said to his comm officer. To whom, sir? To everyone. Open channels. Let them see. The message was broadcast in all major languages. It was short. This was a response. You destroyed one of ours. We took your station. We left none alive. If you continue this war, know this. Earth will not back down. We are not explorers now. We are your nightmare. Across space, species who had watched from the shadows now paid attention. The humans, once thought of as new and peaceful, had changed overnight. And the Velari? They were shaken. On a far Velari capital ship, High Command watched the footage with wide eyes. Their pride was gone. Their confidence cracked. They had lost a full outpost in less than 1 hour, 5 warships gone. Hundreds of trained soldiers erased. Humans should not have this level of firepower. One general said, "They weren't supposed to fight back." Said another, but one voice spoke louder than the rest. "We woke something we don't understand." Back aboard Vanguard, Lieutenant Kara removed her helmet. Her armor was scorched, but she was alive. Her squad had taken losses, 2 injured, 1 gone. She sat in the med bay, staring at a cracked piece of her visor. Her hands were shaking. She wasn't afraid. She was angry. She remembered how quiet her cousin's voice had been in recordings, how she had spoken of peace, of discovery, of working with aliens. She had died screaming in a fire. Kara clenched her fist. "This is just the beginning," she said. Commander Reed sat alone in his private quarters, watching the stars outside. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just whispered, "Now." They know. The war had started. And now it was truly underway. Into the fire. The silence after the battle was almost strange. No more alarms. No more gunfire. Just the cold hum of engines and the quiet repairs of battle-worn ships. The human fleet hovered near the remains of the Velari outpost. It was now under full human control. Debris from destroyed Velari warships floated like ghosts in space. Commander Reed stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, looking at the damage. A battlefield like this used to shake him. Now it just made him think, this is only round 1, he said quietly. Behind him, officers spoke in low voices. Reports were still coming in: injured soldiers, damaged systems, and the enemy's next possible move. One officer stepped forward. "Sir, satellite scans confirm multiple Velari fleets gathering near the outer core systems. We think they're preparing to strike back." Reed nodded. "Let them come." In a distant system far from the fight, the Velari High Command held an emergency meeting. Their faces were pale, long, and marked with worry. Their voices shook as they spoke. "They wiped out an entire garrison in under 1 hour. Our defenses failed. They fought like nothing we've seen before." The Supreme Strategist slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. We underestimated them. We thought they were weak, soft, like many others." A younger officer stepped forward. "What do we do now?" The strategist paused, then said, "We hit them where it hurts. Find a colony. One of their populated ones. Show them that they are not untouchable." The council agreed. A message was sent to a shadow fleet deep in dark space. "Proceed with Operation Ember." 3 days later, Earth Command received a distress signal from Outpost Vega 6, a civilian colony near the edge of human space. It was under attack. Velari ships had come out of nowhere, bombarding the surface. Cities burned. Communication towers fell. Civilians were trapped underground. The Velari had struck back. Inside the Vanguard, chaos erupted. Alarms rang as reports came in from all directions. Video feeds showed buildings collapsing, screams in bunkers, children hiding in ruins. Reed watched the screen in silence. "They want revenge," he said. "And they went after the softest target." An officer asked, "Do we have time to reach Vega 6? Reed shook his head. "We're too far." But they knew that. That's why they chose it. Lieutenant Kara stood in the back of the room, her fists clenched. "We can't let them get away with this." Reed looked at her, then at the officers. "We won't." He turned to the map of Velari space. "They want to show us pain. We'll show them what fury looks like." The plan was simple, but deadly. The Velari had a shipyard at the edge of their inner territory. It built their warships, supplied their fleets, and powered their defenses. It was considered untouchable. It had never been attacked before. Until now. Reed pointed to it on the map. "We hit this hard. No warnings, no mercy. If we destroy this, they lose their ability to fight." "But sir," one officer said, "that's deep in their space." defended by 3 fleets and orbital cannons. Reed's face remained calm. That's why they won't expect us to go there. He looked at Kara. I want Ghost Unit 1 leading the ground strike. You up for it? Kara nodded without hesitation. Always. 2 days later, the human fleet entered Velari territory. At high speed. They used a secret wormhole passage, known only to Earth's Black Ops, to bypass the outer defense walls. It was a risky move. If they failed, they'd be surrounded with no escape, but that didn't stop them. The Velari shipyard came into view. It was massive, larger than any station the humans had attacked so far. Giant metal arms reached out into space, building warships like insects assembling hives. Velari engineers panicked as the alarm screamed. Human ships came through the wormhole, guns blazing. The Vanguard led the charge again. Plasma beams cut through defense towers. Smart missiles smashed into fuel storage tanks, causing massive explosions that lit up the black sky. Velari warships scrambled to respond, but the attack was too fast. Ghost units dropped like fire from the heavens. Kara hit the deck hard, her armor pulsing with energy. Her team followed behind, clearing pathways, breaching security doors, and planting bombs inside key structures. She moved with precision, silent and deadly. Inside the shipyard's control room, Velari engineers screamed as Kara's team stormed. In.1 tried to beg. Kara didn't stop. She wasn't there to talk. She was there to end the war. The entire shipyard went up in flames within 30 minutes. Towers collapsed. Factories burned. Warships still being built were torn in half before they could even launch. As the human fleet pulled back, they left behind only smoke, ruin, and silence. On board the Vanguard, Reed watched the shipyard explode in the distance. That's for Vega 6, he whispered. Later, in the medbay, Kara sat beside one of her wounded squadmates. His arm was gone, but he was alive. She didn't say anything. She just held his hand and watched the stars outside. One of the nurses asked, "Do you think they'll surrender now?" Kara didn't answer, because deep down, she knew something. This war wasn't over. Not yet. The final stand, the Velari homeworld, was dark from orbit. A thick cloud layer covered the sky, hiding their cities from view. Massive warships floated like shadows, waiting in silence. The once proud alien empire had pulled back its forces, regrouping everything it had for a final stand. They knew humanity was coming, and they were afraid. Commander Reed stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring at the planet on the screen. His face was tired, his voice low. "This is it," he said. "Their last stronghold." The officers around him didn't speak. The room was quiet. Everyone knew what was coming next. "We've hit their stations, their fleets, their supply lines," Reed continued. "But they keep fighting, so now we end it, here, now." Across the fleet, soldiers prepared. Drones checked weapons. Armor was sealed. Fighters warmed up their engines. It felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Lieutenant Kara stood. In her dropship, helmet in hand, her squad was ready. Some were nervous, some were angry, but none of them backed away. She looked at each of them and said, "This is the last one. No retreat, no surrender. We make sure no one else dies because of them." They all nodded. Her armor locked into place. The Ghost unit was ready. The battle started like a storm. The human fleet attacked from high orbit, firing in perfect coordination. Velari ships responded quickly, but their weapons were no match now. Human AI-controlled fighters flew rings around them, dodging beams and striking hard. Down on the surface, chaos broke out as Ghost units landed. Kara's boots hit the black metal ground of the Velari capital. The city was tall, cold, and silent. But the enemy was waiting. Turrets opened fire. Velari warriors charged forward, but the humans had come too far to stop. Kara's team moved like lightning, clearing buildings, disabling defenses, cutting through wave after wave of soldiers. Every room they entered, they owned it. Every time they were hit, they pushed harder. They were unstoppable. Deep inside the Velari Palace, the Supreme Strategist watched the city burn on a tall screen. His hands shook. For the first time in his long life, he felt true fear. They are not like the others, he whispered. They don't fight to win. They fight to finish. A young Velari guard stepped forward. What should we do, sir? The strategist looked up, his eyes cold. Send the surrender signal. The guard hesitated. But send it. We lost. Back on the Vanguard, the message came through. Velari High Command had surrendered. Commander Reed stood still, processing the words. Repeat that, he said. They surrendered, sir, said the officer. All Velari ships are powering down. No tricks. They've had enough. The silence that followed was heavy. Not joyful. Not proud. Just quiet. Reed slowly nodded. Tell all units to stand down. The war is over. On the surface, Kara had just reached the palace gates when the call came through her helmet. Surrender confirmed. All fighting has stopped. Pull back. She stood still for a moment, breathing hard. Her armor was damaged, her energy low, but she was alive. We did it. One of her squad mates whispered. Kara nodded slowly. Yeah, we did. She turned and looked up at the sky, where the smoke was starting to clear. 3 days later, the humans returned to Earth. There were no parades. No loud celebrations. Just quiet respect. The fallen were remembered. The wounded were honored, and the victors. They rested. Commander Reed stepped off the Vanguard for the last time. He looked at the Earth's blue sky and breathed deeply. He had seen many battles, but this one had changed everything. As he walked toward the command center, someone asked him, was it worth it? He didn't answer at first. Then, softly, he said, they started it, we finished it. In a quiet corner of a memorial garden, Kara stood in front of a glass wall covered with names. Her cousin's name was there. So were the names of her teammates, who never came back. She placed her helmet on the ground and stared for a long time. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just whispered, now you can rest. Then she walked away, leaving the helmet behind. Across the galaxy, news of the Velari's defeat spread fast. Species once afraid of them now stood tall. The message was clear. Do not attack humanity, ever. Because if you do, they will come, and they will not stop. The end.